It's showing up on Restream where we wanted it. We are going to go live here with Royce Bair very soon. If you are listening to my voice right now and you haven't told your best friend who does photography that he needs to learn or she needs to learn from Royce Bair, then make sure you text right now and say, hey, we're live right now. We are live talking to Royce Bair. Woohoo! I'm hearing myself talk to myself. Let me mute that and make sure that the Facebook is live. And I think you will need to click, Matt, our producer in the behind the scenes. Matt, if you want to click that live, go live. I think you can click it early, or are we going to wait until it goes live at exactly 7 p.m.? What do you think, Matt? Are you going to wait till 7 p.m. exactly, or is it going to go in early? Because I know YouTube is live right now. We've got Carrie Ann Holland, Teresa, and Facebook is what? Okay, live on both. I guess I just need to refresh the page over here. Sweet. I just want to make sure I can see that. So as we have, this chat. Let's see this chat coming in. I see the chat over here. Let's make sure. Andrea Boyle said, hello from Medford, Oregon. Oh, I've driven through Medford, Oregon. I guess I shouldn't say driven through, Andrea, because I go to places on the West Coast more. But Medford is fantastic. It's one of the last places with big options. So I'm seeing text coming through there. If you're listening to me on Facebook before we go live, click that share button. We are not going to bring Royce in until we have 10 shares. And those of you over on YouTube, if you can just tell me and promise me that you would share it, and we'll click the share right now and send it to your friends in an email or a text, then I'll count it. But JHM, you say, hard to find the link, video removed. Yes, that was my fault. We were doing a test run of making sure that the live stream would go, and unfortunately with the tech we're using right now to send it to Facebook and YouTube, we inadvertently unclicked a toggle that said, hey, if you unclick this toggle, we're going to make you wipe out the event and make a new one. And that's what we did. We had to go through that. So apologies all around. Let me double send out to my friends on my email list that we are live over here at this channel. And so if you are on Facebook, go down to the share button and let me know that you've shared it by hitting the thumbs up. That'll be a good way to know. So if you've actually shared it with some friends, said, hey, we're live, hit the thumbs up button. I see 5 thumbs up buttons already, so that's great. But let's get some more shares in there before we bring in Royce. So we're technically going to go live here in about 45 minutes, but I will not bring in Royce until we get some more people here to hang out with Royce, because Royce is the OG Nightscaper, who has created this entire genre of Nightscape, and we are going to learn from him tonight. And so I want to make sure that we have everyone in here. So as I'm looking at the chats, everyone is saying that they're here from all over the country. You got San Antonio, Texas with Luann. JHM's out in Oregon, I know that. And Teresa, and Pan, and Aaron, and Royce. Nice, Teresa says. Carrie Ann Holland, hello from Salt Lake. Hey, Carrie Ann, I'm right here in Provo myself. And let's see, who else? Jay Jeffries. Oh, Jay. You're just bragging now, man. You were hello from the sunny Bahamas. If that's vacation, you got your priorities straight. You came back for Royce Bair from vacation, or at least you're focusing a little bit more right now on Royce Bair. Teresa says she finished the dishes just in time. Awesome. Sweet. Who else? Lance is here from Vermont. Hey, Royce and Aaron. Hey, Lance. Hey, National Parks at Night, Lance. Lance is one of the founders of National Parks at Night, who are now running the Nightscaper Conference, so everyone give Lance a good big hand and thank you. We have Sue Wilson from North Idaho, SS Mold, Mark Moore, so Mark Moore from Southern Cal, and Carrie Ann gave me the thumbs up for being a fellow Utahn. Awesome. Peoria Videos Limited, Chicago. Man, Chicago, for some reason, the people of Chicago love the Utah dark skies, and I meet more people from Chicago out here than any other state. So I'm seeing tons of YouTube text coming through on our chat, but I'm not seeing as many chats coming through that are Facebook. So if you're on Facebook watching, make sure you chat so I can see that that is working. Any other shares? Tiara Mayo is from Salt Lake City as well. Chris is out here from Florida. Kurt Kai is here from Oregon and Portland. Roxanne, hi from DC. Mark is in Colorado. Max is in Ontario, Canada. And I'm seeing still only a lot of Utah speakers. Olaf from Utah Astrophotography. That's either Bryony or Eric Benedetti. Awesome. Hey, Cam is stoked to see you guys here tonight, and I hope that the baby doesn't keep you busy during this next hour. Let's see. We have Robert Souza from Brazil. Sweet. I love the time zone. There's a Facebook comment. Hello from Ohio, if I'm reading that correctly. I need to get my Facebook chat up larger so I can actually read that. Let's see, I'm going to click on this video that's live now, and I can hear myself talking to myself. And there is hello from Laughlin, Nevada. Hello from Mariposa, California. Hello from Pennsylvania. Hello from Ohio. Now we're starting to see those Facebook chats. Sweet. Now, how many shares have been clicked on this yet? Have any of you clicked the share button? I'm going to click it myself right now from my account. Help us share this so that more people can learn from Royce. I'm going to share now publicly. Should I share to my story? I'll do both. Where did that pop-up go? I guess it just shared publicly. Let me also share it my story to my friends. Sweet. Share to your profile. Awesome. So we got some more shares coming through. We're going live in less than a minute. We've got all the tech working. We have Royce waiting to talk, and we are going to learn a lot from who I keep calling the OG Nightscaper. So then Richard's from Brisbane, Australia. What time? Oh, it's later in the night here. Okay, so that's going to be your early morning in Australia. Hey, Richard. Welcome in. And Matthew Costanza from Buffalo, New York. And who else are we seeing? Why is Royce frozen? Oh, well, that's not frozen, Royce. That's just Royce's picture. So Kirk Kais is confused on what a JPEG is. Kirk, I'll let you learn a little bit more. I'll have Steve Stagnotti teach you that part. Steve will help you out. And Kirk is being talked to by Eric, most likely. I'm guessing might be Bryony. Jonathan, hey there from Auckland. Another Southern Hemisphere. Man, you Southern Hemisphere people make me so jealous. 3 p.m. in New Zealand, Jonathan says. And so sweet. All right, we've got 9 thumbs ups over here on YouTube, and I think we have enough shares. I've got 7 comments and 1 share, and that share might be mine. So Angie, Nancy, Deborah, Joni, let's share this with your friends. Let's make sure we get some more friends in here over on Facebook before we bring Royce in. But let's go ahead and get the stream started where you can start to hear from Royce Bair, the man himself. Hey everybody, welcome in. Tonight is a Nightscaper pre-event. I'm Aaron King with Photog Adventures, and we're going to talk about Milky Way photography, nightscape photography, landscape with night and stars and Milky Way band and glorious, glorious galactic core. I'm a photographer who's been doing Milky Way since 2016, and I'm one of those lucky few that went out in the summer to a perfect lake at the perfect time to have Royce Bair drive up next to me and say, hey buddy, what you about to do? I'm like, yeah, we're going to do Milky Way photography. He's like, me too. And then I finally started recognizing the man. I'm like, Brendan, this is the guy whose book I just bought. I just bought his book. Royce Bair has been teaching and helping others learn Milky Way photography for quite a long time. And I am getting him ready to come on screen. And let's bring him in right. And turn on the audio, Aaron. Good job, Aaron. Whew, I didn't fail. Let's bring in Royce Bair himself.
Hey, are
Royce.
we live?
We are live. Welcome in.
It's so good to be here with you, Aaron. Boy, you have had a rough day. I think you started last night working with some lady at your church until about 10 o'clock, helping her out. Are you always doing these freebies?
Oh, no one has heard that. No one heard me say I do freebies whatsoever.
Oh, yeah,
I never do it. It's always very
that.
expensive.
And then at 3:30 this morning, I noticed that you took a friend to the airport.
Yeah, we needed to get him to Florida because he's beginning his 8-month cruise ship job, and he has to get to Florida for training, and he needed to arrive by 4 a.m. What a nightmare.
Well, I'm glad to see that that industry is going again.
Oh, man, no kidding. Especially the fact that we have a lot going on in the world. Yes, there's some ports that are getting changed and closed, but we do have post-COVID, endemic COVID. Now we can focus on celebrating what's right with the world. Right, Royce?
That sounds great. By the way, why are we here tonight?
Why are we here? We're here to celebrate the 2022 Nightscaper Conference that is happening in April. And it's April 26th through 29th. And everyone here in the chat, I'm pretty sure you've already signed up and you will be there. Let me know if any of you have signed up and are going to be out there, because myself, Royce, Alan Wallace, Jess Santos, Mary Beth Kaczynski, Eric, or I'm not sure about Eric, but Bryony Richards will be there. And Eric might be there with a baby in tow. And it's going to be a fantastic gathering of Milky Way photographers. Who else,
their
Royce,
life is certainly their life has certainly changed.
Oh, yeah.
Bryony and Eric, since the little baby girl came along. I think that was in January. So good to see that they're doing that. And I mean, that's what life's all about, right?
Exactly. And it's also about coming to the Nightscaper conference. Justin Miller says, I would love to be their dream come true. Well, Justin, I hope you're going to nightscaper.com right now and signing up and joining us in person, because that'd be awesome. And if you can't be there, I know there's options for you to come back in the future. And, people will be out there teaching what they learned. And so I'm getting answers from Milky Way the Gathering. That's what Kirk Keyes is calling Nightscaper.
So how many people have been out to shoot the Milky Way core already this season? As you know, it just barely showed its face just recently. I went out shooting just this past weekend and got the core rising. As you know, the Milky Way is very horizontal, coming up early in the morning, about 3:30 a.m. to about 5:30 a.m. is where it's coming up right now. And it's looking very cool, but very horizontal this time of year.
It is horizontal, and it has an element of my favorite new tip for Milky Way photographers. Royce, have you ever heard me say what my new favorite tip is?
No,
Not yet?
I want to hear this.
Okay, my favorite new tip, because I've told tips about everything from exposure settings to composition, and now I have a tip that's actually new that only since last Nightscaper, when I taught it at Nightscaper in Kanab, I've been sharing it with every single workshop and every single person I find out at night doing photography. So if you're familiar with the Sky Guide app, you're going to see me show this on my camera. And let me go ahead and make both of us the same size. I will go gallery view so you can see me well next to Royce before we go into his presentation. But on Sky Guide, I'm going to zoom into one complex. It's a complex of stars. That's a nursery. And if you know where this nursery is in the night sky, you will know exactly where the Milky Way is going to be in 1 hour. So I'm saying that if you find this, you'll know that the core is going to be in the exact same position in 1 hour. So if you have that...
Sounds like Antares and...
Yeah.
Ah...
Yes. Oh, no,
Roe.
It's trying to find my current location, and
Yeah.
it wouldn't stay on Antares. But Antares, the Rho Ophiuchi complex,
Yes.
that is the answer. It is so fantastic. Once you see this rake or the head of the Scorpius constellation, you see the bright orange Antares star, you know that right there, if you just wait an hour, that Milky Way core will be there. So if you're bored
Be right
waiting...
there.
Yep.
That's a great tip because I always look for Antares because it's that yellow orange star, and so it's pretty easy to see.
Oh, right. Sometimes I think it's Mars when it's rising. Like, oh, there's Mars. Like, no, that's got to be Antares. When it's on that horizon and it's shining so bright.
Yeah,
man.
and that's a good tip. 1 hour away, the core is going to be in that same place that Antares.
Exactly. I use this. I'm going to use this lint roller again as a visual aid, like I did with Alan Wallace and Yuri Beletsky over on Sunday. But here's our horizon, and we're waiting for this. Here's the galactic core, and here's the rest of the Milky Way band, and it's below the horizon. So pretend like my line back here on the Photog Adventure sign is the horizon. It's coming up, and you see Antares right here, and it's between, say, two cool rocks. If you wait an hour, that's where this is going to be and existing between those two cool rocks. And so
you did that pretty well, Aaron. I'm proud of
Royce. I've learned how to use random objects at my desk during a live stream and made many things work. So Royce, how are you doing? Are you excited for April 26th and getting out there to the Nightscaper conference?
I certainly am. I'm excited for some warmth. I was out shooting Saturday and Monday mornings at 4 a.m. and both locations were 1 degree below 0 Fahrenheit.
Oh man, both locations.
Yeah, and I love going out at night and shooting, but I love being warm.
You favor being warm? You're crazy. No, I love it. I can't wait for summer, but we need more moisture.
Yes, we do.
So then everyone is saying that they have gone out for the Milky Way. Some have not yet. Some are ready for that new Milky Way to come up and see it. What would be your number one piece of advice for a early season Milky Way, Royce?
The location or what to do?
I would say just how to capture it. What do you want to make sure you find at whatever location you're at in the world? How do you make the most of it?
Well, make sure that the object that you're going to be photographing in the foreground is not too high because it's going to block the core of the Milky Way before the astronomical twilight starts fading out the Milky Way. So make sure that you're in an area that is a little bit flat, and or that your object that you're going to photograph in the foreground is not too high, or it can be over to the side, or it's going to block the core before it has a chance to get up high enough, and before the astronomical twilight fades it out. Does that make sense?
Absolutely does. And it's something that I forget here in Utah all the time because I'm excited to go. I know it's above the horizon, but then I get there and realize how close that mountain is and go, I got to wait another hour and a half, and that's going to be bright by that time.
Or you got to get a little further back from that mountain.
I head to Salt Flats typically early in the season, but it's always wet still, and you can't get quite out on it. It's too bad. If you guys are been out already, let us know in the chat where you have actually gone. And throughout this presentation, Royce is going to teach us something that you might have some questions pop up in your head, but you don't want to interrupt him. Don't worry about interrupting. Just write the chat immediately, but do it in all caps. If you write that in all caps, that'll make sure that when I'm scrolling backwards and trying to find the questions that we're going to ask Royce during our Q&A session at the end, I will make sure to answer your questions. So hit us up with any questions, whether it's on Facebook or YouTube. Just give us an all caps question, and I will not forget it in the end for Q&A. So Royce, should we get into some of your presentation right now?
Let's do that so that we can build up some questions. I mean, as I give the presentation, you're going to have some questions and some thought that you want to share, and then we'll have time to do that afterwards. So
okay, awesome.
Let's go for it. Do you want me to share my screen?
Yep, you go ahead and share your screen. All they're seeing is me right now, and I'm going to remind them that right here below me is nightscaper.com. Go check that site out and check and see what you need to sign up for. Maybe it's you and just your wife, or maybe it's you and your husband, or maybe it's you and 17 of your friends. Make sure you sign yourself up and all your friends and get down to Kanab, because we are going to have a magical season in April, and it's going to be perfect for Panorama Milky Way and perfect for Milky Way with a dark sky. And you're going to learn 17 different new techniques or things that you want to try from all the Nightscaper presenters, and you'll be stoked to get out at night every night to enjoy and test what you've just learned. So I hope that we'll see you there. And it's good. I'm seeing some all caps. That's perfect. Keep those questions coming. And now, Royce, I'm going to come back to you, and let's get rolling with Royce and learn some more from the OG Nightscaper.
So my presentation in April at the Nightscaper conference is called Simply Stunning. And the reason I titled that is it's basically stunningly simple. In other words, we're trying to get back to the basics. I see a lot of photographers out there that they're getting so much into the technical part that they're not having as much fun as they used to have. They're not in awe as much as they used to have. They're in so much into the technical and trying to impress other people with their equipment. Hey, we're kind of gadget freaks. I love my gadgets. We're always thinking, oh, this next gadget is going to make my Milky Way star astro nightscape pictures just look awesome. And I won't even have to think anymore. I won't have to be creative anymore because this is going to make me look cool. Well, we all know that some of that works, but most of it doesn't. We're going to talk mainly about single exposures and some stacking and some panoing. Aaron, you gave a presentation last year on panoramas, something that it seems so complicated is really simple. Remember that presentation?
Oh, yes, I do.
Yes. And, Eric Benedetti and some of the other people do some panoramas that just blow my mind. These are tracked panoramas that they'll do several rows, 2-3 rows, and stitch it together. They sometimes have as many as 30 pictures. And my goodness, the resolution just blows you away. But you and I both do these real simple panos.
Yes.
Let's say we just put our camera in the portrait or vertical position, and we only do 7 or 8 stitches across. And those are very simple, but they're amazingly, it increases your resolution and drops your noise considerably. And are those hard to do, Aaron?
No, they are not, and they stitch beautifully even in just Lightroom.
Yeah, so you don't have to have what is it, PUB GUI or
PT GUI.
Yeah, PT GUI, and you can just do it in Lightroom or Photoshop, and it's so easy. We'll talk about that in a minute, but we're going to talk about mainly just single exposures, stacks, and blends, and some simple tracking and some simple panoramas. Not this overly complicated stuff. And you'll see what I'm talking about in a minute. So simply stunning, which translates into stunningly simple. By the way, these are all single exposures. These are some of the first shots that I ever did a decade ago.
Wow. So, that camera a decade ago. Right on.
Yeah. So this, I kind of follow or practice the KISS principle, which is keep it simple, stupid. And I think many of us have heard this before. Let me talk about a photographer. Here's Nicholas, who has won some awards. By the way, every time I show a picture from another photographer, it's credited, and I have gotten his or her permission to do this. Now, this picture that he won an award for, that's his wife up there climbing, and she did most of the work. She had to hang there for about 30 minutes. Can you believe that?
Oh,
yeah, This is just incredible. But he calls this the after work climb. It's 41 exposures for panorama, focus stacking, and exposure control. What does he mean by exposure control? Well, he does various exposures, in other words, high dynamic range, under and over exposure, in order to, look like, for instance, that headlamp and the lights down in the valley, those would just blow away the picture. They're so overpowering that he's had to use high dynamic range exposure control. And then, he's done his tracking, his focus stacking, his panos, so on and so forth. It all amounts to 41 exposures. Well, I think for most of us, that is a little bit more than most of us can handle. And this picture is certainly worth all those exposures, but sometimes we get so much into the details and the technical part that we lose sight of what we actually came out for. Now, certainly Nicholas didn't lose sight. He captured a stunning picture. So here's Eric Benedetti, who, by the way, is handled now with his significant other, Byrony. Byrony is Utah Astrophotography, not Eric the Astro Junkie.
Go to utahastrophotography.com and check out their work. They have brilliant Star Trek images.
But this image here is, gosh, I think it's like a couple of gigs. And someone came to me one time, they said they wanted to do about an 8-foot high by 12-foot wall mural of, the starry night sky. And I says, well, you don't want my pictures. You want Eric Benedetti pictures. And they said, why? I says, well, some of his pictures have 32 panels in them stitched together. So, and they're tracked and stacked and stitched. And so they're just amazing. The resolution on this picture will just blow you away. And here's another person, Sky Pointer, Ralph Rohner, who is a Swiss Air pilot. He flies an Airbus, I believe. But, 11 panels, 5 stacks each for the sky, 9 panels, 3 stacks each for the foreground with low-level lighting, blah, 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 blah. I mean, you couldn't, and oh, look, there's his car out there on the left. So this is a 180 degree panorama. And this is an amazing picture, but don't you guys at home try this in the beginning. You need to, start out with some of the basics. And even those of us who have done, who are pretty sophisticated now, need to go back to the basics from time to time. And you'll see why as we get going here. If you really want to do a lot of panels and you're not into it technically, you ought to do what Paul Wilson in New Zealand did years ago, and that's he bought him a Gigapan Epic Pro, and you can program that. You can get a narrow view 50 millimeter lens and program that to do 50, 100, or like he did, 160 overlapping images. The resolution on this image will just blow you away. I mean, you could do a mural that's 30 feet wide on this sucker. So, but I'm going to get back to the good old basic single exposures. This is John Weatherby up in Washington State. Look at that shot. Now, technically, it's just a tiny bit noisy, but whoa, you could certainly win an award with that shot if you're not splitting pixels. Good old Doug Ingram down in Australia. Oh, it does say Australia. Looking up from down under. That's a single exposure with a 14 millimeter lens. Such a beautiful, that's straight overhead. We don't get that here in the Northern Hemisphere.
No, only those that are living down there in New Zealand and Australia enjoy that. And we had 3 or 4 of them already in the chat, and I'm so envious of them.
So here's another single exposure by Matthew. Notice that he is focusing on the person and letting the stars go slightly out of focus. I believe, let's see, who was it? Ben Canales talked about the human in the picture at our last conference. And he said that, it's okay for your stars to go out of focus if you're concentrating on the person. I think it actually looks more engaging and romantic than trying to get them both in focus. And of course, you'd have to do focus stacking in order to do that, or, several exposures, one for the foreground, one for the background. And then you lose some of the uniqueness of the picture, the serendipitousness. Is that a real word, serendipitousness?
That's a good question. I'll have to check.
Yeah, I think just serendipity is probably, we'll stick with that. So here's another single exposure by Iron Rock, Utah. He is in Utah. And he was able to capture a meteor in that picture. And the reason he was able to capture a meteor is because he was doing a bunch of stacked exposures. And he was doing, some time lapse photography as well. And one of those frames got the meteor in it. But they're all a bunch of single exposures where you can pick it out. Ron, what was Ron's last name?
Reisman?
Who gave it
Reisman?
our presentation?
Ron Reisman. Ron
yes,
Reisman.
Ron Reisman. He talked about that's one of the advantages of doing time lapse is being able to pull frames out and do stacking later. So a lot of neat things that you can do. Here's Rob Hovis. That's a single exposure. That's the processed. This is the raw image of that. But look, he's taken a mirror, a front surface mirror, and laid it in a frame to pick up the core, the reflection of it. What a cool, single exposures allow you to concentrate on your creativity instead of all the technical. Now, maybe a second or third or fourth exposure here would have been good to get the focus stacking done so that back bike wheel could have been more in focus, but it doesn't bother me. Here's Ryan Smith, with low-level lighting at the Toadstools Grand Staircase, single exposure. I'm going to talk a little bit about my history. I've been around in photojournalism and commercial photography, magazine photography, and stock photography for 30 years. I had 3 cameras that I traveled around with. My trusty Nikon there on the left. Those at the bottom, you can see the size of the film format. The medium format, an RB67, 6x7 centimeters, and I had a 4x5 Toyo. And I would go out shooting in commercial and stock and editorial photography, and 90% of the time I'm using my Nikon 35 millimeter, just shooting some great shots. And all of a sudden I see something that is really cool. Hey, this is going to really sell better if I get a higher quality image. And so in those days back in the 80s and 90s, a medium format sold much better than a 35 millimeter. So I'd get out the medium format and shoot it. And if I still liked it and it wasn't a moving object, I'd get out the 4x5. And that's what we're talking about today, is doing single exposures. Always do single exposures right in the beginning. If you like your picture, really like it, and the composition's holding together for you and things are clicking, make sure you do some stacked exposures. Always do stacked exposures. Stacking is the poor man's answer to tracking. So it's so simple to do. And then think about doing panoramas, not those complicated multi-roll panoramas, but the one that Aaron was talking about the last conference, where you do 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 shots in a row, where I've indicated here. So here is a 5-image exposure stack to reduce noise. It's shot up in the high Uintas. And the stacking programs now, as you know, the Earth is revolving, and so the stars appear to move. And so those stars in 5 separate exposures, by the way, this was done with a 50 millimeter lens. And so you can only do about a 6-second exposure before you start to get star movement. So I did 5 exposures at 6 seconds each, with 1 second in between each to write it to the card. So I only spent a total of 35 seconds in total camera time here. And the program is able to discern between the foreground and the stars and stack them up. Stacks both the foreground and the stars separately and then puts them back together. It's just amazing. And that's Equator on the PC or Windows side and Starry Landscape Stacker on the Mac side. The Mac version costs $39. The Sequator is free, but the Mac version is actually a little better. It's the one that Sequator kind of stole its idea from. Yeah, okay. So here's Yuri Belinsky down in Chile. That's a stacked exposure. You've got Darren White, 16 stacked exposures here. Remember, this only takes a couple of minutes, even when your exposure is 10 to 15 seconds long. What you normally try to do is reduce your exposure time. Instead of going 25 or 30 seconds or even 20, you knock it down to 10 or 15 so you don't have any starve movement. And then you increase your ISO to compensate for that. And then you shoot a whole bunch of exposures one after another as fast as you can with 1 or 2 seconds in between to write to the card. And then the program will stack those images together. And sometimes if you shoot enough, you can compensate for the underexposure. I usually just compensate when I do the raw conversion in Lightroom or Photoshop, add another 25% to the exposure, because yes, that makes it more gritty, more noisy, but the stacking will eliminate that. Do you understand what's happening in stacking? Every digital image has a different noise pattern. So all those random patterns stacked together, noise patterns, cancel each other out. It's called a mean, MEAN. So here's a 10 exposure, stacked exposure by Oscar. And by the way, that one that I showed you before of mine up in the UN is, you had a lot of stars going through the trees. This one doesn't have as many going through the trees, so that's a little easier to do. Stacking can be a little tough with geysers and when you have cloud movement because those stacked images will blur the geyser and the clouds more. So sometimes, here, Boonrod may have wanted to do 20 stacks or 15 stacks, but he settled on maybe 11 because he didn't want to blur the geyser or the cloud, or in the case of clouds as much. Sometimes you like that blur, sometimes you don't. So you can adjust the number of images you use for the stack. You just can't put too big of gaps between them, or the program say, oops, something's going on here. There's too much time space that happened. I can't stack these together. So here's a 7 exposure stack. We're going one step higher, 7 exposure stack blended with 1 foreground exposure. So we've got a stack and a blend. And blends allow us to get that more foreground detail. And often you can't do that with Lightroom unless you're pretty skilled. You need Photoshop to do a blended layer. Now we're talking about panoramas, which Aaron loves to do.
Oh, yeah.
Normally, I'm doing a horizontal panorama, and where I'm using vertical or portrait images. This is a vertical panorama where he used 4 horizontal images and started low and went high. Does that make sense?
I think it does.
Yeah. So just 4 image panorama, and he probably doubled his resolution, and one in each shot by Wayne Pinkston. I hope I'm pronouncing this right, Camilio. He's down in South America, and here's 6 vertical exposures. Probably only needed 4 or 5 to get this overlapping, but you do at least a couple more so that your edges aren't as distorted. Here's a 5 exposure panorama that I did down in Zion National Park. That's the Watchman on the right being lit by the light pollution from Springdale. You would not believe the resolution on this image. It is equal to tracking. I am not kidding you. It is so sharp. And then here is this is our last shot that I'm going to show of others. This is a track sky with a blended landscape exposure. As you know, let's say he tracked that for 3 minutes, the sky. Well, he also has to do an exposure of the foreground with the tracking off, so that otherwise the tracking will blur the foreground. And let me give you a tip. Always do your foreground first before you start your tracking, because once you start your tracking, it moves your foreground out of position, and you got to realign. So if you got everything lined up the way you want it, do your foreground first before you turn your tracker on, then do your tracking exposure. And look how sharp that is. I've blown that up. Very cool. Now, one of the things that, we're talking about keeping things simple. One of the things that I did a few years ago was have Spencer's camera, it was right here in Alpine, Utah, take one of my old Canons. I think I picked it up for $800. They normally cost $1,700, $1,800 a Canon 6D, and had it that Canon 5D Mark III down at the bottom. That's a $3,500 camera. and the camera at the top, the 6D, is about a $1,700 camera. I bought it used because once you modify it, it voids your warranty, but Spencer's camera gives you a year of warranty, so it's not a big deal. But it took that $800 camera, and for $350, he modified it and put a heat sink on back the sensor to draw out heat away from the sensor, which is also important. So really cool. I think the modification was $300 or $350, and the heat sink was another $150. You don't have to do the heat sink if you don't want to, but I want every advantage that I can. You can get that camera now for about $400. Since I bought it here 3 years ago, the price has gone down. $400 for a camera that actually performs that. Canon 6D outperforms that $3,500 5D Mark III. Statistics show, I just checked this out, that most of the Astro Competition award winners, like 80% of them, have in the past 5 years have been using the Canon 6D. And the second most popular camera was the Nikon D750.
Wow.
Both of those used you can get for just a few $100 and then have them modified for about $300. Look at the difference in the depth of color and the nebulosity. So even if you're just doing single exposures or some stacking, or just want a single exposure, some panoramas or some single exposure tracks, that will boost your fidelity and vision of the night sky like nothing else. I'm going to just the last 3 images here. I'm going to talk about a shot that I did over the weekend on Saturday. As I said, it was 1 degree below zero. I also did a shot Monday morning at 3:30, but let's talk about this one because I've processed the pictures. I haven't processed the others, but Photo Pills told me, by the way, this is a Sky Guide picture. And I love Sky Guide. Don't you, Aaron?
Yeah, I do. Sky Guide has
so
the best
simple
imagery.
Yeah. So Photo Pills told me that I could start seeing the core of the Milky Way at about 3:35 in the morning. It'd be just barely coming above the horizon. And that, at about 3:35, but with the mountainous area, I wouldn't really be able to see it until about 4 o'clock. And then by 4:37, the moon would come up and wipe, glare out the core of the Milky Way. But I decided, even though I only had a half-hour window, I'm going to do this anyway, just make sure I'm all set up and ready to go. So I went out to Simpson Springs Pony Express station. This is a recreated lava rock station from the original. And so it's not the original, but, I light painted I did low level lighting on there. That's just 2 little lights, one in the middle and one in the back for the back window to glow out there. And this is just a stacked exposure, 15 stacks, bang, 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 just as fast as it'd write it to the camera. They're 15 seconds each, 15 exposures stacked together in Starry Landscape Stacker. So this is the core of the Milky Way coming up at about 4:35. And then just a few minutes later, the darn moon starts coming up. But also, the first thing I saw was Venus. I could start to see Venus coming up there. And I thought, wow, I think the moon is going to come up right over the corner. And it did. So the crescent moon just peeks out. Remember, we've got just the corner there coming out. And so I shot 15 exposures just as fast as I could. as it was starting to peak. So basically what that does is it gives me kind of a high dynamic range because it's underexposing at the beginning and overexposing it towards the end. And then when they're blended together in stacked in Starry Landscape Stacker, it really creates, a better tonal range. So I thought that was kind of cool. So what I'm trying to say is that you're going to actually do better by taking a lot of pictures. I mean, go ahead and plan like I did, but be willing to get the other stuff. And in order to do that, you have to be flexible. And in order to be flexible, you got to keep it simple. And stacking and easy panos are some of the best ways to do that. Here's my little ending slide for my contact information, but I want to read something that Brian Ott wrote today on when we announced this. He says, "I'm excited for the pre-conference live streams to start again. As for the topic, I love a good track pano, but one of my most popular photos was a single 8-second exposure. It was so simple that I almost didn't even get my camera out to take it. At the end of a night of shooting, I will often put my tracker away and then snag a bunch of short, untracked single exposures from different locations." Excuse me.
Bless you.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'll often put my tracker away and snag a bunch of short, untracked single exposures from different locations as I walk back to my vehicle. These often turn out better than my big track complex shots. And that is so true. So I'm going to unshare my screen. You think this is a good time?
Yep, go ahead. I have them watching me only, and there are some questions about that location. That location is actually blocked off now. You cannot quite do it anymore. Do you want me to say where it is, Royce?
Yeah, sure, go ahead.
Blocked off. It's Palouse Falls, and I have never captured one there. And I have met people who have gone out there, and they happen to be there at the same time as Royce Bair. What lucky people.
So in order to shoot this shot a few years ago, in order to stay there after sunset, you have to have a camping permit. So I and my workshop people had a campground. You can have up to 8 people in it, and otherwise you cannot be there. Well, now because of COVID, they won't allow you to stay there overnight at all.
God, not even for a campsite, huh?
Not even for a campsite. So,
oh man, okay. Things have become frustrating. Boy, oh boy, oh boy. So as we get into the live Q&A portion of this, we have a bunch of questions that are in all caps, and we had some questions that were very specific to images that Royce was sharing from other people's portfolios, and I don't believe Royce has the answer for those settings, so I'll be skipping some of those. But Royce, let me just get you started on a very simple one from James Baker over on Facebook, where he says, what camera is a good start for all of this? And you were answering it roughly with all of what you're saying.
Well, hey, if you want to get started for just a few $100s, that Nikon D750, you can't go wrong with that. On the Canon side, the Canon 6D. And I'm not talking about the Canon 6D Mark II. That is, that articulated screen is real cool. But the sensor is not as good as the original older 6D for astro work. Okay.
Gotcha.
And you're only going to spend a few $100s on both of those cameras. So that's a good one to start out with. Those are full frame sensor cameras.
And with these cameras that you have, anything after 2017 created is going to be perfect for it. Whether you have better features or perfect features or brilliant features or good features, you're going to be able to capture the Milky Way, unlike it used to be. So now,
as you know, that most of the Nikon and Canon are doing away with their DSLRs. They're going totally mirrorless, and in some ways that's definitely a good thing, especially on the Canon side. That's, you can put an adapter in between your old Canon lenses or lenses made for the Canon. And it has a filter drawer. And so you can adapt your camera to either full spectrum, astro, or H alpha. H alpha is what I prefer, as you saw in there. And then you can slide in filters to shoot all kinds of different things, including regular daylight. So one of the cool things to do is get a full spectrum modification, and then you just slide those filters in that adapter drawer behind the lens, and you can shoot anything you want.
One of the questions that's not as gear specific was, what are some of your favorite parks to shoot at night, Royce?
A couple of favorite parks. My two favorite are Capitol Reef National Park. It's in kind of central Utah. Most people, I mean, there's really no fee to go through that park because the road goes right through the middle of the park. And unless you stop at the visitor center and pay, you're not going to have to pay a fee. But the northern half of that park, I'd say probably only 5% of the people that go through Capitol Reef visit that Cathedral Valley area, the upper and lower Cathedral Valley, and even fewer of them visit the upper Cathedral Valley. A lot of people have heard of Temple of the Sun and Temple of the Moon. That is in the lower Cathedral Valley. And like I say, only a small percentage of the people that go to Capitol Reef visit that area. It's all dirt road, and you have to have high clearance. You don't even have to have four-wheel drive. It's kind of nice, but you go through a bunch of stream beds and river beds, but it's rugged. And as I said, the upper Cathedral Valley is hardly visited at all. And I just love those formations up there. All of that area is a Bortle 1. Between a Bortle 1 and Bortle 2. It is so dark. Yeah. My other favorite area is Escalante Grand Staircase, which is a national monument. There's so many fun things there. And a good share of that park is Bortle 1, or that national monument.
Eric Benedetti's like, don't give away the Capitol Reef secrets.
Yeah. Well, I'm not telling you, there are a lot of people that know. I mean, it's all over the social media, the lower Cathedral Valley, with Temple of the Sun, Temple of the Moon. But the upper Cathedral Valley is kind of a hidden secret. And I'm not going to tell you some of the locations up there because it's taken me years to find them, and you're going to have to do that on your own. I'm not going to tell you where they are.
Well, speaking of dark, Teresa asked, do you do any dark frames for stacking?
I do occasionally, but I find that I get more mileage if I'm starved for time. I get more mileage by shooting more light frames than, like, if I only have a limited amount of time. I find that 5 is the absolute minimum, 7 is better, 15 is my average. When you go over about 20 light frames, you get a diminishing return on your time investment. But if you will do about 50% of more on dark frames, you're going to get, less noise. But to be honest with you, I don't do it as often as I should because I'm lazy and I run out of time. La, 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 la.
Yep, all those reasons that we've all had. So Andrea asked, Royce, do you ever get artifacts when you use Sequator for stacking?
My friends do. I don't, because I'm a Mac person and I use Starry Landscape Stacker. And occasionally I have gotten artifacts, but not very often. And I find, as I talk to my friends who have used both, they tell me that Starry Landscape Stacker is a lot easier.
I've used both, and I know that they both can be easily well used, but you might have some scenarios that are just better solved with Star Landscape Stacker, and you got to spend a lot of money to get Star Landscape Stacker.
Yeah, the $40. Yeah,
So
ooh, that's
much. But Royce, apps are only $3.
Yeah.
So Denise asks, when stacking, what ISO do you tend to use?
I'm typically going between 6,400 and 10,000. My most common is 8,000. So let's say, for instance, a normal exposure would be, by the way, if the three little pillars of astro landscape exposure are f2.8, 30 seconds, ISO 6,400. If you shoot that combination, you're going to get something. You're going to get something pretty amazing of the Milky Way. Okay. But the problem is the noise at 6,400 is terrible. The 30 seconds is going to give you an elliptical star pattern. So you really need to bring that down to 10 or 15 seconds, depending on your lens, your focal length, the 400 rule, the 600 rule, whatever you want to use. But bringing it down to 10 to 15 seconds is going to stop that star movement. Well, that means you've got to, instead of shooting 6,400, you should be using 12,800, right?
Yeah.
Well, instead, I'll go 8,000 or 10,000, and I'll adjust the brightness in, my camera raw converter or in Lightroom, whatever, and then stack those images. And so I'm typically doing 8,000 instead of 6,400. I'm kind of splitting the difference between going 10 or 12,000 ISO and dropping it down a little bit and underexposing my image slightly. Okay.
Yeah. And this question from Justin says, what if you want to use the moon to light the foreground? Have you done that? And any thoughts about using the moon?
Well, you saw that last image. That was foreground. I love that backlighting. And yes, I'm using the moon more and more. And of course, the king of that, our star performer on that is Brad Goldpaint, who won an award a few years ago of a shot that he did in the Badlands.
2018 Astronomy Photographer of the Year.
Yes, beautiful shot. He's looking right into a crescent moon with the Milky Way over to the right. It's beautiful shot. And so when you're shooting with, and by the way, you can't do it with a full moon. You can barely do it with a quarter moon. Crescent moon is the best. I can do it with a quarter moon if the moon is very much to my right or left, perpendicular to the Milky Way. But if it's right in the image, it better be a crescent moon. And it's best if it's just starting to come up over the horizon because it's got more atmosphere to go through. So it's being filtered. And in answer to your question, I can usually use a lower ISO, 3,200 to 4,000 when I'm shooting with the moon. Okay.
All right. Nahar asks, any tips on how do you bring out any of the colors of the Milky Way?
Yes, get your camera astro modified and go with H alpha. Full spectrum is most photographers don't go with full spectrum. They go with H alpha. H alpha is that wavelength that increases the redness in the nebula, and it just makes everything look better, in my opinion.
Yep.
And but it's not a weird enough band that you're going to have to change your color balance for your foreground. In other words, I can shoot a foreground and blend that without too much trouble. I have very little color adjustments that I have to make. Okay?
Yes, and this other question is something that I'm going to use just to pump up Royce a little bit more. Not your ego, of course, Royce, never. But this is the question. What is the name of Royce's ebook? And his ebook is Milky Way Nightscapes. And that ebook is something that I had my iPad, and they took the picture of the cover and then put the picture over on an app that I could write on. And I had Royce sign my ebook. And that's my claim to fame. Woohoo!
And that was let's see, that was on your iPad, and that was the Pro version, wasn't it? The big
Yes,
iPad.
it was the big iPad.
The big one.
My
But
baby.
so my main website is my blog, roycebair.com. And if you look up in the right-hand corner, there's a link to my ebook there. So if you go to roycebair.com, up in the right-hand corner, it gives information, a link to the ebook. That ebook is slated for an update this year. So sometime towards the end of this year, I'm going to be updating that ebook. And people that follow me on Patreon, which was linked, if they're a supporter, even $3 a month, they are going to get an upgrade on that ebook for free.
Ooh,
Yeah.
nice. Get into his
Yep.
Patreon now while you still get that benefit.
Yeah. By the way, if you sign up for Patreon, the minimum supporting of $3 a month, I give you the old ebook, the current ebook for free, along with a couple of links to videos that we did at the last conference, that I did at the last conference. Plus, you get updated on my new ebook when it comes out the end of this year.
All
So
right.
that's a big value.
Yeah, it is. All right. Here's a question that I'm going to ask you to do, because you've talked about H alpha a bit already, and I can't think in my head if you've covered it enough. So just give a nice summary, like a elevator pitch for speak more to the H alpha modification, how and who does it. This comes from SM Wilkes.
Well, there's several people that do it, but of course, my favorite, because I am an ambassador for Clarence Spencer of Spencer's
Awesome.
Camera in Alpine, Utah, and he's done a great job for me and my friends. But what they do is they take your camera, open it up in a clean room environment, and they strip the filters off the sensor that are blocking its admission or receiving of various wavelengths. And then they put other filters on there if you're doing H alpha in order to make that more sensitive. So that is the H stands for hydrogen. So it makes that hydrogen pick up more in the nebula. And that's basically, all they do. So, they can do other things. So what's that filter that's on your camera that keeps you from getting that herringbone pattern if you get
polarizer?
What's
is
that?
It a polarizer that will help
No, it's
with
not
that?
a polarizer.
Not a polarizer? What is
I can't remember
but
what it's called. But if you want to get super sharp images, there's an anti-alias filter that goes over your camera. It protects you from getting these moire patterns when you're shooting product photography. Like if you get a herringbone coat, you'll get if you didn't have that
filter, maybe.
Yeah, low pass filter.
Good
and
job,
so
Andrew.
I think it's called a low pass filter. But
and
you can have that taken off. So to get super sharp images, if you're never going to shoot anything commercial, because if you got a repeating pattern in your image, a textile pattern or something like that, you'll get moires that'll just blow. I mean, it'll just blow your mind. But if you're not doing any in nature, you don't have those kind of repeating patterns.
No, not really, unless you have a lot of picnic settings underneath the Milky Way.
Yes.
The nice red and white tablecloth checkers. Nice.
Yeah.
Adeline asks, Royce, do you happen to use any pollution filters or Starscaper filters? I think the Starscaper filter she is referring to is also another getting rid of the light pollution. Do you use any of those?
I don't. And Ralph Rohner who's also called Sky Pointer 2000, has done a whole bunch of tests. And let me tell you, he's fastidious about that. And he says that most of those anti-pollution light filters are worthless for what you're doing. You're going to waste your money on that. A lot of filters were designed when sodium vapor was very prevalent. They'll take out that wavelength of the sodium vapor, which is on the far right with the orange and red, and eliminate that. Well, a lot of your cities and municipalities are switching to LED. And so that wavelength is not on the street lamps anymore. So it's getting less and less of you get a light pollution that can't be filtered out with a narrow spectrum pollution, anti-pollution filter. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. And especially with LCD, all the new LED lights, it's just so different now. So we're spoiled out here in Utah where we just go away from the light pollution. It's nice.
Yeah. But if you're doing some telescope work in the city or doing some stuff in a high pollution area inside the city, and you want to get some, nebulas or stars, those filters will help you quite a bit. But if you want to eliminate some of the light pollution, out in the rural areas, they really don't help that much.
Yeah, it's
for what we do, the astral landscape photography. You're really wasting your money.
Yep. We're in our last 5 minutes of this episode, everybody. We are going to do a few of the questions that are pending, but I really quick wanted to pay some homage to those who are also speaking at the Nightscaper conference. So real quick, I want to point your attention to the other speakers that I haven't mentioned tonight, and these are... We got Mike Shaw. I mentioned those other three: Joshua Snow, Betty Maya Foote, Dr. Kawei Lin. I mentioned Mary Beth already. Forrest, Aaron. Oh, that's me. Dr. Bradley Richards, Dan Zafra, Christine Richer, Eric Kuna, Paul Ziska, Adam Woodworth, Matt Hill, Gabriel Biederman, Chris Nicholson, Lance Koenig, and Tim Cooper, all from the National Park at Nights group. So big thanks to them.
And Alan Wallace is coming here in the pre-conference next week at 7:00.
And he will be recorded with me for a live session that you will watch at 7:00 since he is in the UK over in Wales. But yeah, Alan Wallace will be joining us and we'll be able to ask him a ton of questions. So those of you who can actually make a 11 a.m. recording, you can come into that and watch it. And then the rest of you who have, work or something, you can join us and watch it at 7 p.m. So here we go. Let's get the last few questions out there. Justin Miller, are you worried about blowing out highlights or dynamic range going up so high in ISO?
You're going to lose about a stop of dynamic range by going to ISO 10,000. Even 6,400, you're getting close to losing a full stop of dynamic range. But the noise is the bigger problem. So yeah, and I'll tell you what'll help you a lot in your stacking, if in Lightroom or in Photoshop, in the Camera Raw, if you'll go in there on the slider in Basic and pull those whites clear over to the left, and even the highlights, take them down about 30, 20, 30, 40%. You'll be able to protect those highlights a lot better. Sometimes what I'll do is, as you know, in my ebook, I talk about bringing up the contrast with an S curve to pop up that Milky Way sky, but that blows out your highlights. Well, sometimes after I've done that, I'll capture just the highlights from the original raw picture and just collect those and then drop them in another layer right over top of my Milky Way. In other words, I'll feather it. I'll do a several pixel feather and then drop those in. Do you understand what I'm saying here? Yes. Especially on the big stars like Antares and so on. If I get a Jupiter or Venus in there, I'm always doing that.
Well,
I'm taking it from the raw. So I'll keep that original raw image, and take the biggest stars and drop them in over the processed Milky Way. Okay?
That's such an awesome tip. There's plenty of other videos out there that Royce has done that you can get more information like that. Just check out his YouTube channel, check out his Patreon, follow him. Royce, thank you so much for being here. We've got thank you coming through. We've got see you in the night in the national park. See you later. Thank you for the great live stream. Thanks for a great presentation. Information was awesome. Thank you so much, Royce. Thank you, Nightscaper, for presenting these. So everyone was happy. Thank you so much, Royce, for being here tonight. We really appreciate it.
It was such a pleasure. I hope we gave some new information and some enthusiasm out there for getting back to the basics.
That's right. You don't worry about the camera gear that you have. Don't worry about buying one of those awkward, really amazing Star Trackers. Just get out there and capture. Like I say in Photog Adventures, get out there and have an adventure of your own. Don't waste any time. Let's go. Let's do this. They'll be checking out your Patreon, Royce. Phil Eckert says thumbs up. Great presentation. Great presentation. Thanks you from everyone all around. Thank you all for being here, and I hope you return back next Tuesday at 7 p.m. or 11 a.m. to watch Alan Wallace. So we'll be hanging out together to record this, and I will record with those who are here, and then those of you who are watching with me later at 7 p.m. will be enjoying the highlights and the best parts. So thank you so much. Have a good night. Thank you, Royce. See you, Matt. See everybody in the national parks at night, guys, and we'll be back in a week. See you later.
Goodbye, everybody.